Yell Washington to the world. Woo! Time to let your rhythm be born.
Hello, everyone.
Hello and welcome back to KRSE Radio Out of the Box from the Pacific Northwest.
My name's Laura Mooney.
And I'm your co-host here, Jaime Lialanaya. Very happy to be here.
And we have another exciting topic today. Have you noticed that society's unraveling?
It's coming apart. I mean, it's like something's happening.
Totally coming apart. The question is, are you prepared?
And do you have a light heart big enough, to survive this wave?
So the episode today is going to be called Personal Emergency Management in relation to canning and food storage and what they're doing to our food all over the world. So the question is, if a crisis occurred, could you fend for yourself? We can look around at the world and all the devastation that's taking place and taken place. You can look at Lahaina, look at the hurricanes that are happening, look at East Palestine, Ohio, still a crisis there. Fires everywhere, California, Texas right now, which, gee, isn't that a coincidence? When they finally stood their ground, they set the state on fire. And then you could see slaughter of cattle and chicken everywhere. And what do you think? What are the chances of getting government help when things really hit the fan? What do you think, Jaime?
You need the help of nature. Like in Texas, they had a cover of snow that helped with the fire. Nature comes for its own,
Oh, that's a blessing. So, what was it last year? We looked at FEMA. I was looking at some articles about FEMA, and they were down to its last $3.4 billion as the Maui fire started, and the hurricanes, particularly Idalia, was hitting the United States. And they said that half of that, more than half of that, would be exhausted, or actually all of it would be exhausted by the 1st of September last year, and we're not even sure how much they got refunded. So That's terrifying. The other thing I noticed, and this is something that our teacher has hammered about for years, is to have water and have your own wells. And I don't know if you've noticed, Jaime, but in Mexico City, they're just days away of being empty.
Yeah.
The pond drained, basically. And they have, 22 million people. They're one of the world's largest cities, and they're facing a severe water crisis. They said that they've pumped so much water out of the aquifers that the city is sinking 1.5 feet per year.
Well, you see, the crazy thing about Mexico City is that it was a lake. When the Spaniards came, the Aztecs were there. They had the city, their main city there, but it was in the middle of a lake. And then they just kept building over it. So they're pumping the water out of this lake that is underneath the whole city, and the whole city is sinking. It's not a pretty situation out there.
Not at all. I mean, I don't think it's ever really hit home that what do these people do? What do 22 million people do when you don't have water and you can't get it?
Yeah.
You die.
That's the unraveling at a fast pace and a critical situation. But you see, again, the little comment that I made about nature, coming for its own, it's humans keep ignoring to be in harmony with nature, and then you have all these problems. It's just crazy.
Yeah, like Maui, when all the supposed fires happened from, shall we say, direct energy weapons.
Yeah.
Which they had houses that apparently weren't burned down because they had blue.
I know, I wear my blue shirt now all the time.
Or, some very high-powered people in legislatures in California, their places didn't burn down. How is that? How does that work?
Yeah.
I wouldn't call that nature preserving them.
I mean, talking about water, and Ramta's recommendations from the very beginning. I'm over 30 years, since I came to school first. I came from a desert. I grew up in the Mojave Desert, and in my city, there's like 3 million people there, no water at all. All the water has to be brought in, and so it's not being in harmony with nature. It's just a crazy idea, but people keep building and building and building there. So moving here to come to school, beautiful Pacific Northwest, green everywhere, rain everywhere. Ram always saying, bless the rain, plant your own garden, live in the country, leave the cities, become close and in harmony with nature. And it changed my life. That was like probably the very first big lesson for me to learn from school, from Ramta, was to become close to nature and to learn to live in harmony with it. It changed my life.
Yes. So would you say people are becoming more aware now? I mean, check this out.
They have to.
They better be. This is
survive.
part of the Great Awakening, right? So we know we have growing societal unease, and society is unraveling everywhere you look. I found it interesting researching that in the last 12 months, 39% of millennials being those born between 1980 and 1995, and 40% of Gen Zers, those are the Gen Z people born between 96 into the mid-2000s, have been spending money on prepping. And according to this website, finder.com, it said since 2017, before the COVID pandemic, only 25% of Americans had loaded up on survival supplies, but now you've got 39% of the millennials and 40% of the Gen Zs actually storing food and prepping for emergencies.
That's great.
That is great.
That is really great.
And the articles that I was looking at was why younger Americans are stockpiling, and the key word was society is unraveling, and they know it.
Yeah.
And what about the big boys? Like the Zuckerbergs, the famous people, right? They're selling off billions of dollars in stocks and building massive survival undergrounds. This was an article just last week, February 28th.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah. So the question is, what do they know if they're selling stocks on massive scales?
They don't seem to be very smart about it.
Not very smart. I think Zuckerberg is building his...
in Hawaii or somewhere, Maui.
A survivalist compound in Hawaii, right?
Surrounded by ocean, no way to retreat anywhere.
I think I heard somebody say that's what you call all bucks and no brains.
Yeah, that was our lady.
Yeah. All right. How about we listen to what Ramtha has to say? Because RSE, Ramtha School of Enlightenment, is a culture of sovereignty.
And he's been saying that from the very first moment I came to school more than 30 years ago.
Since 1986.
Yeah.
Here we go.
How much food do you have in your pantries? How long will it last? 2 days? 3 weeks? If you have not provisions for 2 years, you are going to run perilously short. Get it? Now, that is not adding to fear. The ant does not add to fear. It is in harmony with what it knows to be a truth. And through survival, surviving. Surviving is not difficult. It is a sublime thing that is not a hardship. When you are in flow with nature, you never have to survive. You are just in the flow. Now, cities. What do you have to reason about them in the days to come? Though they are the seductress, they are desiring everyone to be there, they love no one. Where does their food come from? Where does the water come from? Where? You reason out, then why? It is not an advantageous place to be a part of. And they are the first to spur forth the disease and the plagues. In the days that come, they are loaded with many surprises. But they are surprised only for the unknowing and the unprepared, or the ones who did not want to listen because it was too big of a deal. to do anything about it. It is imperative, I urge you, to move out of your cities and seek you a place that has nigh land. And if the land is only large enough to support an elaborate lawn and flowers, dig it up and plant food. To wherever you live, I advise you in that area with great wisdom to find your water source and test it. Do not take for granted anything. If you are living as it were indeed on the simple earth, drill a well. Learn to be sovereign and be prepared. Find a place to where you are feeling one with this life and go forward. If you don't want to do that because it's too much of a problem, so be it. It is all right. You are still loved, but now you know.
Now you know.
Now you know.
And that was 1986.
That was 1986. So what do we mean again by sovereignty? He's talking about having at least 2 years of stored food, a piece of land away from the cities, away from water. In other words, like the Zuckerberg compound in Hawaii.
Exactly. Don't sign up for that.
Don't sign up for that. Have your own well, store your own water, non-electrical tools of all kinds, non-hybrid seeds of all varieties, winter clothes, boots, and sturdy shoes. Remember, society is unraveling. When you're prepared, you're not affected.
It's the days of change, you know? And as nature changes, humanity that lives as part of nature has to change as well.
It does. So we're talking about food, storing your own water, your own tools, have all your appropriate clothing that you would need for all kinds of weather. We're going to take a deep dive now into some of the things that they're doing to our food. So sit back and be prepared to be shocked. Here we go. We're looking at this one where they're spraying and injecting our food and thereby altering it. Here we have them injecting this fruit hanging on its bush with some substance, and then they're dipping oranges into some chemicals. Big buckets of oranges. And we have a woman who's spraying in a greenhouse. And we have another big vat where they're dipping fruits into. And then this is interesting. They take kale and they dip it in something. And it makes it all of a sudden look like it's moving on its own alive and plumping up and expanding. And here we have them removing with some sort of knife all the wax on an apple, if that's wax. And here they're spraying and again injecting your eggplant with this hypodermic needle filled with creamy white stuff. And then here we have a big pool with floating veggies in there. Spraying your bananas with more chemicals. Dipping the flowers themselves in chemicals. My. And then cutting the outer hard part of a watermelon to see fuzzy white stuff oozing out. Another big vat of vegetables just floating in chemicals going up a conveyor belt. Cut the end of the stem off of like a broccoli and put some tincture on it. And then they're dipping the leaves in more chemicals. I mean, everything is just dipped in chemicals. They're showing you mixing the chemicals now into their spraying container. And this gentleman walking through inhaling everything he's spraying while he's in his greenhouse.
That's
my.
a horror show.
That is a horror show.
We're living in a horror show. Oh my God.
You didn't even know what they're injecting into the food. I mean, the big milky white stuff into it and God knows what, and spraying it with God knows what just so it'll look good when it gets on the shelf.
Yeah. And artificial flavors, to make you want to have more and more and more of it while poisoning yourself. It's crazy.
That is crazy. So have you run into any in the food in the store that has the appeal label on it, literally? I haven't seen it yet.
No, I haven't either.
You haven't? Apparently, it's bad.
I heard about it, yeah. It's like a new labeling system for food that has been tampered with.
Yeah. So let's check this one out. It's about appeal labels.
Is now applied to fruits and vegetables at major grocery stores, but there's more to the story than you've been told. Food companies have already been applying appeal coating to fruits and vegetables for 5 years. Since 2018, Costco has been selling apples and avocados that contain the appeal label, and Walmart has been selling cucumbers that contain the label since 2020. Appeal cannot be washed off with water and is made by processing grapeseed oil with the use of 2 solvents, being ethyl acetate or heptane. The base ingredients in appeal, which are mono and diglycerides, permit up to 21,000 parts per million of ethyl acetate and 23,000 parts per million of heptane in the final coating. They also permit up to 6% soap, 10 parts per million of palladium, 3 parts per million of arsenic, 2 parts per million of lead, and 1 part per million of cadmium and mercury. The coating is classified as generally recognized as safe, which indicates that the FDA did not do its own safety review of it, and it was done by the food and chemical industry. And you may be thinking that if you buy organic, then you can avoid this, but that's not the case. The Organic Peel label is approved for use in organic products. Back in 2002, the NOSB approved mono and diglycerides for use in organic food, but restricted their use to the drumroll drying of food, specifically for potato mash mixes. Since the NOSB cannot find any favorable replacements, they have continued to allow its use, which has now been expanded to food coating. The company, which has gained the backing of high-level investors like Oprah Winfrey, Bill Gates, Katy Perry, the World Bank Group, and the Rockefeller Foundation, wants to fight food waste. Food waste is a significant issue that I've touched on many times. However, I believe this is a concerning band-aid solution to a much bigger problem, which is that people are disconnected from their food sources. Rather than stressing yourself out with looking at all the food labels to see which brands do and don't apply appeal, my recommendation would just be to buy fruits and vegetables directly from farmers who grow them.
Yeah, that's the answer. Know where your food is coming from directly.
Exactly. It sounds, Bill Gates. It sounds like that's part of the slow kill process.
That's another scary movie.
That's another scary movie. But I mean, if you're going to eat that, you're eating arsenic. You're eating
lead and mercury and all kinds of heavy metals. That the body can't digest that.
And so, if they put the appeal label on there, they assume that you know what that means. No. Okay.
It's all about waking up to find out what it is that you're doing. It's personal waking up.
Mm-hmm. So just keep in mind we're showing these clips here because we want to inspire you to can your own food, to store your own food, to get clean food if you can, the best that you can, because it doesn't look like the markets out there are going to be improving their quality of food.
Always looking for the source, looking for the sources, in any kind of discussion, it applies mostly also to food. You have to find out the source, where is it coming from? What are they doing when they package it? When it travels, to get to the shelf where you picked it up. It's about becoming aware and wake up to what it is that you're putting in your body. Find out the source.
Yeah, because then you might not buy it. So let's check this out. This is called Smart Fresh.
Most consumers are unaware that the fruit they eat from the supermarket has been treated with a product called Smart Fresh. I want you to see it in action. First, they place the fruit in a hermetically sealed chamber. Then they drop the Smart Fresh into some water to form a gas, and then they lock up the gas chamber nice and tight. They leave the fruit there for about 24 hours so that it can soak up all the gas, and voila, your fruit has been contaminated. I mean Smart Fresh. Now let's look at an apple that's been treated with Smart Fresh and compare it to an apple that hasn't been treated with Smart Fresh. This time time-lapse video shows the changes over 3 months. As you can see, the Smart Fresh apple hasn't changed a bit. Most people don't even realize that the fruit they buy at the grocery store can literally be a year old before it's actually sold, and you wouldn't know the difference. Let's see what the makers of Smart Fresh have to say about their product. They say the active ingredient of Smart Fresh is methylcyclopropene, or MCP. They describe it as a simple hydrocarbon molecule. Well, examples of simple hydrocarbons are as follows: butane, propane, and even hexane. It turns out they're gassing the fruit with petroleum-based products, ladies and gentlemen. Now, they just call it a simple hydrocarbon so that nobody worries about it. I mean, who doesn't like a little diesel with their fruit, right? Their website also states that this can be used with other fruits and vegetables. SmartFresh is authorized for use with organic foods. And the worst part here is that people are totally unaware.
Yum.
It's coming at us from every angle.
Every angle. And even in organic food. That's what I'm saying. It's like we're talking about food storage. And when we bring our guest in later, we're going to talk about, where we can find clean food. Because it's not an easy feat anymore to find clean food unless you're growing it yourself. And, everybody's like, don't eat GMO. Only eat non-GMO. Check this out. So we're watching a GMO tomato swim in salt water. They call it the fish gene effect. And the person is filling 2 bowls with water. And then they're adding salt to both bowls. And now they're slicing a tomato. And then they take the outer edge of the tomato that has the skin and a little bit of the meat of the tomato. So it's a long, thin strip. So then they take the tomato and they put the non-GMO tomato on the left, and they put the GMO tomato slice in the bowl on the right. And there's a little time lapse. And then all of a sudden, the GMO tomato slice on the right starts to swim like a snake in the bowl. Serpentine swimming, all by its lonesome. A tomato is swimming, genetically modified. I don't even want to know what that would be doing in your body, or how it might be altering your DNA. And then you have the non-GMO tomato over there on the left. It hasn't moved at all. And the other one it's like it's intelligent.
That's crazy.
Don't eat a GMO tomato. Just don't do it. Well, let's not stop there. Let's take another look at this next video at what they're doing to our food.
What's happening?
My goodness. Spray, spray, spray. Lines of people spreading out with hoses, spraying, and then massive needles injecting your pot roast and spraying potatoes so they look nice and fresh and well colored. My goodness. And again, injecting vegetables on the bush with who knows what. Supposed to look good and mature, but harmful to humans. And then we have an assembly line injecting chicken. And then they're dipping your peas in some colored mixture to make them look lovely and fresh. And then the cucumbers as well. And then they're injecting the watermelon. There is a name, I can't even pronounce it for those of you who are watching online. And then here's a huge assembly line with mounds of whole chickens. And they have a container with the long hose and needle on the end of it, and they're actually injecting these whole chickens in the breast area and then in the leg and thigh area. And this chicken looks pretty thin or maybe feeble, but when they inject it with this, it actually makes the breasts all pump up. And then they do the thighs and it makes them pump up. I mean, skin almost starts to burst on a couple of them. My goodness. And they just do one after the other after the other. And certainly cannot be healthy for us. But that chicken sure does look plump and scrumptious. But it does look like it. It's like blowing up a balloon. You know, it looks like the skin could just burst. God knows what that is, right? So anyway, in the beginning there, you see all these people out there spraying and touching everything, and they're being replaced with this.
Y'all ready for this?
AI in action.
Is that a walking chemtrail?
Well, the little ATVs running around. But that other one had all fours, so definitely AI involved now in spraying crops. It's at least one good use for AI. How you doing out there?
I mean, I first became aware of the non-GMO and the organic stuff in 2011, when that great documentary Thrive came out with host Foster Gamble of the Procter & Gamble family, and he kind of rebelled, went against his family and wanted to reveal all this truth to the world. And it was that documentary Thrive, and then there was another one called Genetic Roulette, which was all about modifying the GMOs, Monsanto and the food for cattle. And then we eat that food. And it came at a very, very important time for me because I was getting really sick. I couldn't digest food. I was bloated. I was feeling horrible. I thought I was like lactose intolerant, something. I didn't know what was going on. And then I saw that, and I saw about the cows, eating the Monsanto food, the GMO, and they were like getting the same symptoms as I was feeling. I was feeling like a cow. And then I did exactly what they recommended. 3 weeks, remove the food, and give them healthy food, and stop injecting them with all kinds of stuff. And 3 weeks, the cows were fine. Me, another cow. 3 weeks.
You were fine?
And it all went away. So I was totally sold on the non-GMO and the organic food because I experienced it. I went through it, and I was not lactose intolerant, so I could eat cheese, which I love, and everything that I like to eat, I could eat everything. But it was hard to find. This was, 13 years ago. And it was so hard to find, and I didn't care. Just wherever I went to buy food, if it was a small little organic, non-GMO section, that's all I would get. And I just made a habit of it. And now, because more people are becoming aware of it, then there's more choices. But I really look forward to hearing from Abby, our guest, as to where we stand there right now on the organic and non-GMO and what she recommends, because it made a huge difference to me. I mean, I thought I didn't know what was wrong with me, and I was perfectly fine. It's the food.
I agree. And guess what they're doing to these? We don't know what they're doing to the American cheese that you buy that's all sliced and they're in their individual little packages that you just peel the plastic off and you can throw it on your sandwich. Yeah, watch this if you ever eat that again.
I wanted to come on here and show you guys this that I saw, heard, and read about. I didn't believe it, and I was like, there's no way. This is cheese that I just took out of the fridge. And you can plainly see that I just opened it. So, when you burn it, do you hear that? It's plastic, people. It's not melting. It's burning. Kind of makes you wonder why.
Wow.
So, won't be buying that anymore, right?
Yeah, no.
I mean, who knew? I mean, but that was pretty cool. You know, she's a security guard and she's at work and she's like, I didn't believe it. And she unwraps it and it's just sizzles. If it was real cheese, it would just kind of melt, right?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Okay. Now, I wasn't going to go here, but I have to go here, particularly with all of the child trafficking in the world and the things they do to our
That's another part of the horror story we're in.
beloved children. And I don't know if this is true or not, but we've heard enough about it and it's all over the internet. So we're going to include it for those who still insist on going to fast food restaurants like McDonald's and Burger King and etc.
Of our enemy, which is the white race, and we bring them to the basements in the synagogues where we drain the blood and watch them die there. It's very similar to how we do the sacrifices that we do with the kosher butchering, and so we do that, and then we mix it with the Passover bread, and so we eat the blood of our enemies. And the bodies, we're not cannibals, so what we do is we take those, because we can make some shekels, and we give them to the slaughterhouses, and those are pounds and pounds and pounds of meat that we grind up in the sausage and the hamburger, and that's why we made those the most popular things, sausage for breakfast and hamburger for lunch. And so all the goyim out here are really eating their children. And even when we say this outright and tell you people, you don't believe it. So
Pretty crazy.
Yeah. And I think it was McDonald's was incorporated back in the 40s, early 40s, if I recall, in California. And, I mean, what a genius idea, right? How else would you get rid of all of that, those carcasses? But that is absolutely disgusting. And when I first started reading about listening to that, seeing it elsewhere, there have even been articles where people, you know, have bitten into a sandwich and there's a finger.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's real. So if we know that's real and that's been reported and McDonald's has been sued about that, then I guess it's not too far of a stretch, is it? How the hell did a finger get in there? Oh, okay. Now, one of the more recent things that they're doing, I was looking online the other day, and you have Scott Sickapy. He's a Tennessee legislator, and they have a bill that they were working on passing that he was bringing before the committee, a health committee, about labeling your lettuce or your vegetables to let you know, in fact, it's been vaccinated and that you are going to be vaccinated when you eat it. And the question was, you know, he wanted to make sure that if he was going to consume it, that he was going to be getting the appropriate dosage. So this is really happening. God. This is right now, you know, in front of, well, it passed. So let's just listen to it. It's about 3 minutes long, but it's just listen to it, because if it's happening in Tennessee, it's going to be happening everywhere. And the question I had, so if they vaccinate the lettuce and it's on the shelf, does it shed?
Oh my God.
Does it vaccinate the other fruit around it or vegetables around it just by its mere presence? I mean, that was something that I thought about. So let's listen to this Representative Scott Sickapy out of Tennessee.
All right, that brings us to item number 3, House Bill 1894. Chairman Sickapy, you have a motion, a second. You're recognized.
Thank you, members. House Bill 1894 classifies any food that contains a vaccine or vaccine material as a drug under the Tennessee Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, defines vaccine or vaccine material as a substance intended for use in humans to stimulate the production of antibodies and provide immunity against disease, prepared from the causative agent of a disease, its products, or a synthetic substitute, treated to act as an antigen without inducing the disease, that is authorized or approved by the United States Food and Drug Administration. Mr. Chairman, I'll answer questions.
All right, thank you for that explanation of the bill. Do we have any questions for the sponsor? Chairman Kumar, you're recognized.
Kindly tell me, I don't understand the underlying need or logic or what we're trying to do.
The basic premise of the bill is if a food source has a human vaccine in it, we would deem that a pharmaceutical in Tennessee to make sure that we don't overdose or underdose that food source and then compromise the efficacy of the drug.
Can you give me an example of a food that's a vaccine?
University of California, Riverside has already perfected the ability to put human vaccines into our lettuce right now. Also, tomatoes has the ability to do that also for UC Berkeley. And then Big Tobacco, RJ Reynolds and stuff has perfected the ability to put a human vaccine into tobacco products.
And is that even legal to do in the state of Tennessee, to sell those with a vaccine in them?
Well, I'm not arguing that point. What I'm saying is there is no law deeming those that when you go into a grocery store, you should know as a consumer, this head of lettuce is a head of lettuce. The head of lettuce right next to it could contain a vaccine in it. All we're saying is if it does have the vaccine in it, make sure it's listed as a pharmaceutical so people can get the proper dosage.
Well, my question is right now, can you walk into a grocery store and there be a head of lettuce for sale that has a vaccine in it? I don't think that's allowed under state law presently. And if it is, and you have to list it as a pharmaceutical, are we going to then have Walgreens pharmacists with a refrigerated section? I mean, how's this going to play out?
This is more of a consumer protection bill right here, is to make sure that if you're going in to buy tomatoes and there's a polio vaccine in there, that you are aware of what you're buying has a polio vaccine. The problem you have is if it's not treated as a pharmaceutical, being the size and difference between you and me, how many tomatoes do I have to eat to get the proper dosage versus how many tomatoes that you have to eat? And if you eat too many, do you get a overdose? If you eat too less, like we had in the cattle industry with aeromycin, we weren't dosing our cattle properly and the horn flies were developing an immunity to it. If we don't have the proper dosage of a vaccine, it could lead to the efficacy of that drug not work anymore.
Any further questions for the sponsor of the bill? A question has been called on the bill. All those in favor of House Bill 1894 say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Ayes have it. Bill goes on to counter and rules.
Wow.
Is that not terrifying? That is terrifying.
Insane.
And did you hear him slide that in too about tobacco products?
Yeah.
So
wow.
people are going to be smoking and they think they're just enjoying their nicotine. Well, and all the other chemicals that are in it. Why not just add vaccines?
Wow.
Oh my God. Next thing you know, they'll be putting in vape products. God forbid. Better get your tobacco while you can. That's horrible.
Wow.
And I mean, he even says it. So here's lettuce right here, and then this one over here is not vaccinated. We got to have a label. And then, you know, you need to eat how many heads of lettuce or how many tomatoes to get the proper dosage. And then, that person died. Sorry, they ate too much.
But they didn't answer the question because one of the people there said, like, shouldn't this be illegal right now? And they said, like, they never answered. You know, he was asking, is this already happening? And you just want to label it.
In their state, yeah.
So that's obviously the answer, that this is already happening, but it's not being labeled. And now they're arguing they should have a law to you know, require the labeling to be done correctly, just so you get the proper dosage. But I think the thing to notice here is that it's already happening. Otherwise, they won't be discussing there should be a law.
Right. You know, I had the thought that, wow, maybe it's time to become a breatharian, right? And then I stopped and said, oh, let's see. Chemtrails, snake venom in the air, what else? You know, It's like stop breathing and don't eat.
Or just listen to Ramta's recommendation. Go to a place where you can have a little garden.
Yeah.
And plant it yourself and enjoy it, and then pair up and build up a community, that you can be supportive in getting other ingredients that maybe you couldn't grow.
Yeah. I think just the point is that the need and the time to become sovereign is now, and don't wait any longer because it looks like it's just going to get worse.
It's a matter of life and death right now.
Yeah.
I mean, at the rate that we're going.
So in 2022, Ramtha made some very pertinent comments again about sovereignty. Let's play those now.
Long ago, I told my people, no one else told their people, except the savvy militia who knew better, to get out of the cities, get away from water, get your own land, make sure you have water, and I don't care if the land is as small as your auto machine. You can drill on that piece of land and you can grow food on something that small. Get away. Go to the high places. Go to where you be protected and begin your work as sovereign beings. And if you're too lazy to do that, no one feels sorry for you. You deserve the reality of doing nothing. And these warnings we're giving long in advance. Free will, free choice, not trusting long vision that is greater than your own. Put up food, pay everything off, live simply, and store away things that one day you will never be able to get. And many people heard, and they built their undergrounds, and then nothing happened, so they sold it all that left, because nothing was going to happen. This is and always has been symptomatic of the voice in the head that says nothing's happening, you look like a fool. You could sell all of this and make X amount and move to Bev Hills or some god-awful place where they traffic children under the ground for sexual depravities, mutilation, and blood drinking. Millions. And if you don't do it, you don't belong, and you don't get status. So, long ago, and it's a historical fact, I asked you to do all these things. Many of you here did, and many of you didn't. It's never too late, but you're going to have a hard time when the wrath of the New World Order is underway.
Yeah.
So the message is the same since 1986, even prior than that, to this day. And it is never too late. It's never too late.
And it's way obvious now. This was the wise choice. I mean, we couldn't see it back then, 30 years ago. Everything seemed nice and beautiful and nothing was going on to harm us. But now, with all the information coming out and all the horrors and the unraveling that we are seeing in the world, I mean, globally, then Ramta's recommendations, were the wisest recommendation.
Yeah.
To follow. It's never too late, and it's a change of consciousness once you apply yourself to it, and it tastes a lot yummier.
And it's a lot better for you.
And it's a lot healthier for you. So it's just a triple win right there.
So before we go any farther here, I wanted to recommend this book. It's called 1 Second After. And I'll put a link that'll be with the episode link. Because this book, you know, it's a story that is something occurs that makes everything basically go black, power out. You can't get anything. And it's not so much the story that I like, but if you do read the book, you'll know everything under the sun that you could possibly think of to help you prepare for any event. It's called 1 Second After.
Awesome.
So we're going to play a little tune here, and then after that tune, we're going to bring our guest in, who has been listening, and I'm sure has lots to say about everything that she's heard.
Look forward to it.
Welcome back after that short break. And I would like to introduce our guest, Abby Haddock. She's here today with us. She's going to talk about a lot of things in light of what we talked about. My first question to you, Abby, is in light of the world we're living in with all this food being poisoned and processed in ways that it's toxic, and what the rhetoric we just heard about putting the vaccines in our food, the possibility of shelves at stores becoming barren, water shortages that we discussed. We didn't get into chemtrails. That's a whole nother show. What do we do? Help us, Canning Queen.
Well, that's a great question, and you hit the nail on the head earlier when you mentioned being a breatharian. I certainly have considered that. But being a canner for as many years as I've been at it, about 40 years, I don't just can, but I have been putting away food. I heard Rumpha's message so many years ago, and I've been chipping away at it and learning new things every year. So that's the key, is just to say, I'm going to do this. Everybody can do it. And to start learning the skills that it takes. And then to have a garden, as big or small as you have, just start growing some things yourself. You know, we should all be horrified when we go to the grocery store and read the labels, just as you've shown with the videos that you've shown. And it's up to us to do our due diligence and to do the work and put away food yourself so that you not only know what's in it, but you're imbibing it with your love and your frequency and the words that you use. So your end product, I would say, would always, my spaghetti sauce would be better than ragu any day.
Oh, I'm sure of that.
Hey, you had mentioned to me that you had the opportunity back in 1986 to ask Rumpha about sovereignty. Could you elaborate on that?
Yes, I went to one of the first Yucca Valleys, and in a small group, we were able to ask a question. At the time, I was thinking about going with a group of people from Massachusetts and moving out here collectively. So I felt a little security in that moment that I wouldn't be alone. But when they said they wanted to move to an island in the Puget Sound, I said, no, that's not what we were told to do. So I was afraid. How would I move by myself? How would I be sovereign? So I asked him if I could be sovereign myself. And he looked at me and he said, yes, but you would have to get up off your pallet. Well, it took me years to understand what that meant. I thought, I don't lay around in my bed all the time. What is he talking about? And I realized over the years that it meant I had to take responsibility, learn, and accept the fact that I am God and that I can do it. And I would learn more and more, and therefore I would become sovereign. And I think it feeds right into the last event that we had when, you know, Rumpha talked to us about the two words. What were they, Jaime? The two words that begin with C that we looked at. One was hearing your own voice versus consensus. And I realized, yes, for me, this has all been about me learning how to do all these things myself, and therefore I am becoming sovereign.
Excellent.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, consensus or, you know, free will, you know, acting.
I remember Ram a few years back, he was like, when you actually participate in your own survival, it means you want to live. And because you want to live, then you're going to have a destiny to fulfill.
But you have to make the choice, you know?
Yeah.
That's it. You know, choice or consensus, what do you prefer?
You know, Abby has sent me some pretty fun pictures, and one of them was, you know, 100 years ago, everyone was a prepper. And it shows, you know, that's what they did. They canned everything. They stored everything because they had to get through the winter. They didn't have a store to go shop at.
There weren't grocery stores. What happened?
Right.
You know, government, they came in and were affecting us over all these years to bring in. We went from the general store, and then we moved on to department stores, and we moved on to shopping, to malls and shopping centers. And think of all, and now we shop online. And all of those were to take away our ability to do it ourselves. We became dependent on someone other than ourselves or what we can do in our own backyard. Look at how we've been manipulated all these years.
All these years. That's what they want you to be, dependent and dumbed down.
Then exactly. You can be controlled.
So I hear you were on Facebook asking some questions to see what people were interested about. I have the whole list here you sent me.
Oh, I wish I had it. I wish I still had it in front of me.
I have it. You said that they were interested in can chicken and other meats and how to can it, as well as dry canning and steam canning, and how to organize their own food storage in their pantries, and what food they shouldn't can.
Okay, so there are different kinds of canning. There's hot water bath, and that is for low acid foods. Those are fruits and pickled items. In order to kill botulism, you have to get the internal heat in a jar up over 240 degrees. And there's less of that opportunity in the high acid foods. So then you go on to, well, what do you do with meats and mixed vegetables and, like the spaghetti sauce? Then you must pressure can those items because the heat does get up that high. And you often can longer periods of time to make sure that the botulism is dead. Botulism is a neurotoxin, and it can kill you. So it's very serious when you learn how to can, to learn the proper methods. Always go to the USDA. It's a government agency. But the reason that it's important is over the years, they have done testing, and there are some universities that also do testing. But they haven't been testing the past few years, so there aren't any new updates. Why aren't they testing? They don't want us to know more information about how to make our food safe. I find that very interesting. There's another method called steam canning, and that again is for the high acid foods like your jams, your jellies. You could do applesauce, things like that. I've seen lately some people ask questions about oven canning, where people actually take things like, let's just talk about spaghetti sauce, put it in jars, put it in the oven, leave it in there at a certain temperature for a few hours. I don't recommend that. That has not been tested and found safe. I wouldn't do that at all. So I never recommend. When I do teach a class, I go exactly by the guidelines, the USDA guidelines, and I teach people, start out that way. Later on, you can loosen up on a little things, your kitchen, your recipe, but pretty much I can buy the book. I want to make sure that my food is safe, and I don't want to waste any. I'm very cautious about that.
Give us an example. For example, that something that you canned how long ago, and then you ate it, and it was fine.
I've eaten my canned goods that have been 10 years old. Now, you can look at a jar. If you see anything weird in the jar, obviously you get rid of that food and make sure your animals can't get to it. But for the most part, if you keep your food safe, that has to do with how you store it. You don't want it to have extreme temperatures. You don't want it to be exposed to light. So keep it in a dark place. The room that I keep my food in is a dark room. I have covered the windows, so the light's not in there. But 5 or 6 years, things are really good. Now, there are other ways to preserve food. Food can be dehydrated. That's pretty simple to do, dehydration. And there are loads of things I have learned over the last couple of years about dehydration. I showed this to Laura. I learned that there are many leaves in our garden that typically I would have pulled up and thrown in my compost pile, but they're edible. Things like bean leaves, pumpkin leaves, squash leaves, pea leaves. I usually put them in my compost pile, but now I take them, I harvest them, I put them in the dehydrator, and then I grind them up, and it makes the most delicious green powder. And that green powder can be put in a blueberry muffin. It can be put in your soup or stew. The kids won't know it's there, but it's very nutritious. And these are things we were going to throw away.
Yeah. You told me that about meal bones. What you do with your bones?
The bones. Now when I can, let's say I'm canning turkey. I'm a big turkey canner. I take the bones after I have made my bone broth, and I've gotten the goodness out of the bones. I then take them and dry them either in the oven or the dehydrator, and then I pulverize them Now I have my own bone meal. Now, I figure by then the oogie boogies are probably gone out of those bones and it's safe to put in my garden. It didn't just come directly from a slaughterhouse.
Right.
Wow.
So I throw away very, very little these days. In fact, I no longer have a large trash can. I have a small one because I don't throw away very much. I can't stress enough to people, learn to cook. Learn to cook from scratch. It's taken me years to learn all these things, but you're going to use your own ingredients or ingredients that you have sourced well. So don't just go buy a box of brownie mix. Learn to do it yourself. Make your own bread. I can't remember the last time I bought a loaf of bread.
Have you ever canned bread?
Well, that's called Rebel canning, and that's, again, not approved by the USDA, but do I do it? Yes, I do. I can things like let's say banana bread, and I can it, let me use a different word. I put the batter in a pint jar, and I bake it in the oven without the lid on. When it's done, I take it out, I put the lid on, I put the ring on. The heat will make it seal. Now, does that mean it's taken out all the botulism, those definitions? No, but it's cooked and it's ready. And I used to always bring those to events in the days that we were in the parking lot or in our tents, and I'd have banana bread for breakfast. I don't know what you had, but it was
Nice.
Wonderful.
So you feel very comfortable with the methods that you use and you teach in your classes. 5 to 6 years is no problem. And Ram is recommending that we should have 2 years worth. So it's way beyond even our master teacher's recommendations. And then you can obviously add more as you go along and just follow your recommendation. Just can everything or just preserve as much as you can. And there's so many methods, and you are a great resource for those who want to find out more information, correct?
Yes. So there are other things that you can do to put food away. You can also freeze dry it. Freeze dryers are very pricey. I haven't manifested one yet. I would like to learn how to freeze dry. There are lots of other little tricks that you can do to put away food. Like I said, I've been doing it 40 years, and I freely admit I did not fully embrace the concept of rotation. I wish I had. So if I had food go bad because it was just too old and I hadn't gotten to it and I hadn't gotten I was one of those people. I would can it and I would hoard it and I would hang on to it, and I'm so happy to see it on the shelves, and I wouldn't use it. That was foolish. I don't do that now. When the pandemic happened, my friends were running out to the grocery store. I sat home laughing because I had so much food here that I had canned. I started using it. So for the past few years, I have become much better at eating the food that I put away. And I do it all the time. I don't go to the grocery store very often. I don't need to.
Wonderful.
Because
Wow.
I can so much each year. And so I can fruit, vegetables, meat, soups, sauces. And then because I have dried goods, I dry my herbs. So I make my own, like, taco flavoring, fajita
Nice.
flavoring. I have those in jars, and I mix it up with things that I have. So again, I'm not getting that packet that's filled with all kind of gobbledygook that you don't want in your body. But
So
people
this-
just do it for convenience. Oh, I'll get some kind of mix to make salad dressing, and I'm rolling my eyes. Like, why are you doing that? You don't
Yeah,
have to do it.
Convenience can be a killer.
That's the biggest killer. One of my favorite sayings is, I'll can anything not moving. I also freely admit that I have become a canaholic, and I love canning. And so it makes me happy to can. And Laura's been to my house. I set up a canning kitchen on my covered deck. I can every month of the year. Hardly a week goes by that I'm not canning something. Now, you asked about sourcing. That's very
Yeah.
important these days. before the last couple of years, whatever ingredients I could find, I canned. Now I'm different. I've had to change. And so I do have a garden. I only have a quarter acre, and I grow a lot in my garden. So I use my own. I check local farmers, and I go and talk with them. I interview them. How are you taking care of your vegetables? How are you taking care of your beef or your pork or your lambs or your chickens? I go and talk to them. And so I have networked with people that I can trust as much as I can trust those people other than myself. But I don't have room to have a cow in my backyard. I will have chickens this summer. That's in the works right now. I also will order food sometimes if it's now. You've addressed this. Just because something says it's organic, it's not safe anymore. Because even if you have a quote unquote organic farm, what's falling out of the sky every day that we look up and see those lines in the sky? So, we can do the best that we can. I do look for organic as much as possible. But again, there's nothing that's really, really safe anymore. So I also order from you can request things from a local store here, Winco. So you can get a pound or a 25-pound bag. I also love Azure Standard. You can order very good products from them. I also use freeze-dried products from a company called Thrive Life because they have agreements with farmers. They source direct, and they've interviewed them. They've checked it out. They're doing the best they can. No antibiotics. They don't do the mRNA vaccinations. They're not putting artificial fertilizers on their vegetables. But the key with them is that I learned, and I didn't know this before, that big company gets the food, let's say it's produce, the day that it's ripe. And it goes directly to their factory and gets frozen that day, as opposed to what you go to the local grocery store and you see the selection of vegetables. How long has it been since those were picked?
And
they
hit
were
with Smart Fresh.
at the peak of ripeness. So they have less nutrients in any store, even the organic section. They have less nutrients than if you find something that was freeze-dried immediately. That was a brand new concept to me. So now I'm incorporating and I'm teaching myself to, I don't just buy the cans and put them out in the storage anymore. I get the cans and I open them and I'm starting to incorporate them when I cook. If I don't have enough onions left over from my garden, I'll use those.
Right. And we have Mari's greenhouse. She has a huge greenhouse and sells pretty much everything.
Mari and team are amazing.
Yeah, and I'll leave a link from that as well.
Excellent.
Go ahead.
Let me ask you a couple of things. So if I go to the store and I see an organic label only, I may not be getting the best food. But what if it says non-GMO? Is that safe?
Well, do you know what non-GMO means?
It means that it hasn't the seed that was used.
The seeds haven't been doctored, so it might not be a Franken vegetable. I call them.
So would
They're
that
better.
be safer?
Absolutely. Everybody doesn't have a garden yet, or the ability to have one. I think everybody has room for a tomato plant. I don't care where you live.
So, in light of that and that question, when you don't have a big space, you and I talked about that as well. How you can get creative in some of the things you can grow your food in.
Container gardening. And you can have containers. Look, I go to the grocery store and I get free buckets. Yeah, you heard that right. Free. And I bring the 5-gallon, sometimes they're different sizes. I bring them home, drill a couple holes in the bottom, fill them with really good soil, and I have many buckets in my garden as well as my raised beds. And you can build a simple frame and be able to have like 3 tiers high. Go up. You'll be able to grow more in a space. You can grow a tremendous amount, if you trellis or put your containers and grow vertically.
That would make it hard for the deer.
Well, yeah. And the rabbits. It makes it harder for the rabbits, too.
That's my project this year, is to make it deer-proof, because they thought I was growing it for them. They were like a stampede in there eating all my stuff.
Yeah.
But what about using your own seeds, from one crop to the next? Is that
I highly recommend there are people in town now that are offering lessons on how to be a seed saver. I save as much seed as I can save so that I know where it came from. And if I had a good crop, especially let's say my zucchini was fabulous this year, I save all the seeds so that next year I will again have great zucchini.
Wonderful.
I think, Abby, we even talked about you can buy a small bag of soil and just cut it open. Drill a few holes in the bottom.
You can do that. You can I cut barrels that I've had for a long time. I cut them in half. I grow my potatoes there so that they don't spread all over the place. I can control them, and I live alone, so it's very easy for me to harvest them. All I have to do is dump over the barrel. You can grow in a bag. You can grow in a cardboard box.
Here, let me show this.
You just have to be creative. All of this, there's so much information on the internet while we still have it.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things I wanted to share today is I would love to inspire everyone to make sure that they have a great library and they're putting away books, how-to books, because if the the internet goes down, you're going to want a book.
And you sent me a lot of links, and I will post them with the episode as well.
And when you buy things like this time of year, you're not growing celery, but if you go and you buy some celery in the store, don't throw away the end of the celery. Put it in a little dish with some water, and you'll have celery start to grow. It won't go 6 or 8 inches high, but even that little bit of celery that'll grow on that free on your windowsill is enough to put in maybe the next time you make tuna fish salad.
Nice.
And you can do that with onions. There's all kind of vegetables, carrot tops, and it's free.
Mm-hmm.
Look, I'm the frugalista. I love finding things free. So I also encourage people, learn to forage. If I see someone buying apples in the fall, I want to shake them. Apples, pears, berries are free here. Rumpha has told us before, go out. I'm the kind of person I know all the trees in my neighborhood, believe me, and all my neighbors know I'm coming for them because they just let the fruit fall. They don't eat it. But I will drive around and I'll see someone with a great tree in their yard, and I will go up and knock on the door and say, may I please pick some of your apples? I will bring you back some applesauce, or I'll bring you back apple pie filling in a jar. And people always say, oh, no. But yeah, go ahead. Go take the apples. I never pay for apples, ever.
That's awesome.
Smart.
I tell my friends, and they're like, oh, I couldn't do that. Yes, you can. And this year, you better be out there picking everything you can find.
Right. And
put it away.
I heard you say you were going to have chickens at some point. So are you going to be canning your eggs? Water glassing?
Yes. Personally, I have not done water glassing for eggs because I didn't want to put away eggs from the grocery store because they're Franken eggs. I call them Franken eggs.
Frankenstein.
Yes, because things have happened to them. They're not really normal.
It's alive.
So this year I will have 4 to 6 chickens. My neighbor is going to share the project with me. We will have our own eggs, and I will be water glassing them. If I have access to a freeze dryer, you can put eggs in a freeze dryer and get great powdered eggs that can be used for all kinds of things. They even do scrambled eggs. I have frozen eggs in a ice cube, tray. So I've had those before when I had a glut of eggs. But this year I'm so into where did those eggs come from? What did they feed them? What kind of chicken was it? How long has it been sitting in the grocery store before I get it? I didn't always think of those things before.
And I love something you mentioned, that is how you talk to them and how you relate to them. I'll share something personal that I love doing is when I pick eggs from my chickens, and I can pick 3 in each hand, and then I do my walk with the eggs in my hands, and it's just, I just love my eggs. I mean, I make delicious all types. I've invited Scott many times to have the delicious Mexican chilaquiles con huevo, but I really recommend that. It's how you talk to the chickens, it's how you talk to the eggs that you're about to eat. It goes together with the Ranta's toast that he taught us how to bless our water. Well, what about the wine, the coffee, the apple pie? What about the canning process? What about everything
Your
that
supplements,
we eat?
your meds, everything.
You know, and but I recommend the walk with the eggs in your hand. You're gonna love that.
Brilliant. My Berkey water filter, I can see from where I'm sitting, has words taped to it.
Beautiful.
Yep.
We had that clip from What the Bleep, where they did the testing with the Masaru Emoto, and they had the words on their water, and it completely changed the water.
Right.
That's right.
So, Abby, I noticed when I was at your place that you're doing electroculture.
I discovered electroculture last year, and I had never heard of it before, and I started to watch videos on it and to read about it, and I thought, since I already grid my backyard, I wonder what would happen if I put some copper wire out there. So the year before, I had taken down some lilac bushes and some forsythia bushes that I had stored in a pile. So I took these branches that I already had. I bought some copper wire. I find 12-gauge wire, not too heavy because it's too hard to twist, but I twisted it around clockwise around these poles. And I first started out the 4 corners of my garden, north, south, east, and west. And I thought, I wonder if I'm creating a field here. And then I started to see plants come up. And I thought, well, I'm going to put a few more out there. So now I have a pole of some sort, and I had an old broom handle, I had a dowel. It doesn't matter what wood you use, but I go out there and I spin the wire around. I have about probably 6 to 8 inches piece in the ground, and I have a piece at the top going up towards the sky. I even had a couple of crystals around, and I put those on a couple of them, and I put those out there. What the heck? I'm going to try it. And I noticed my vegetables were great. Even my house plants, I put pieces. Now, again, it was pieces of a lilac tree that had been down for a year. And I put the wire around it, the copper wire around it, and I put it in my house plants. And by God, those little pieces of wood sprouted, had leaves coming out of the top of them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's amazing. And then along with it, I learned about grounding and about taking my shoes off and going barefoot so that I would feel the energy come up out of the ground into my body. And that definitely helped me. And I go out even when there's snow on the ground now because I dump my coffee grounds in the morning. That's my habit. And I go out barefoot into the yard and the garden and dump my coffee grounds. It's become one of my daily habits. And I have like a little path in my backyard, and I do my walk around there, and I do it barefoot. So
nice.
All of these things I know are impacting the electromagnetic frequency that's all around us. We all have towers. We all have radio waves. We've got the internet. We've got all of this. And I have seen my garden change because I did such a simple thing as put some copper wire out there. There's loads of information to read about that. Do your due diligence.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Spring is at hand. It's just around the corner. Plant well, everyone. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Abby?
Do your due diligence. Start a library if you don't have one. And just go out and do it and have fun. It is There's nothing nicer than being out in your garden with your hands and your feet in the soil and to reap the harvest that you planted.
Mm-hmm. I've got a lot of links that Abigail sent me that I will post. And Abby, can I go ahead and give your email address for people who want to contact you?
Yes.
It's Abigail, ABIGAILHAD 7 at Comcast.net. Abigail had 7 at Comcast.net. You can also find Abby on Facebook. Her full name, Abigail Martha Haddock. I'm also going to put the link to your Thrive business. So if they're interested in any freeze-dried food, they can find you. She does have the link here to the USDA canning guidelines. So we certainly don't want anybody getting botulism.
No.
So we also have several YouTube channels that she's recommended. Again, the canning books. Let me see, food storage books. Really a great recommendation to have hard copies, because if we go dark and everything is down digitally, at least you can read.
Abigail, you have done fantastic work. I mean, that's called great work. And truly, congratulations. A big applause to you.
Big applause.
For everything that you have accomplished. And thank you so much for coming to the show and sharing all your knowledge, your love for what you do, your passion, and your choice to actually do something about it. Get off your pallet.
Get off your pallet.
And do it. Congratulations, you did it.
Thank you.
That is awesome.
Yep.
That is really awesome. Thank you so much.
Remember our first list. What was on our list? My pantry has always been full.
Yeah. So be it.
Let's have a toast to that.
My pantry is always full.
Go ahead, Abby. We'll let you do it.
From the Lord God of my being, I call forth that we all are inspired to take care of ourselves, to be sovereign, and be joyful while we do it. You can do it. So be it.
So be it. To our pantry being full. So be it.
I accept to being sovereign and free. So be it.
Well, everyone, we thank you for joining us today. We're going to sign off, and we'll see you next time.
Enjoy your food.
This is KRSC on your Channel 7. Yale, Washington to the world. Woo! Time to let your rhythm be born.